Look, let's just get straight into it, shall we? Because I'm sure people are frothing at the bit to hear the audio from Michael Maguire in regards to Glasshouses in Queensland.
Yeah, well, you've got to make sure you don't live in glass houses. That's all I say, is that, things happen on the field. And that was, one there that, Joey, and he's a special human being, Joey. Like, to have to deal with that, yeah, glass houses, interesting.
Sounds like it's gone on your skin a bit, mate.
No. Well, at the end of the day, he's my player. They're my players. And you want to have a crack at our players. Well, we're about us and we're about what we're doing. And I guess you've got to make sure that when you're with your players, that I'm looking after them.
All righty, that's okay. Well, I think we should go. We'll get Billy Slater and Brent Reid, their exchange on NRL 360 to give you the full tapestry of what's actually happening.
Sort of lit the fuse today. He was asked about the comments about Reece Walsh in the lead up to Origin 1. He said that, and the response since that to Joe and Joe taking out Reece Walsh, and he's basically accused Queenslanders of living in glass houses. A lot of people have taken that as a bit of a shot against you. How do you respond to that?
What comments?
The comments
Are they from me? The comments from me?
The comments from you after the game. I think people have taken what Madge has said about people living in glass houses and taken that as maybe a shot at you, and your comments after the game, which I think you had to go at New South Wales about targeting Reece Walsh.
Nah, I purposely didn't comment on that incident if you listened to the press conference.
Oh, sorry, it was after. Sorry, I think you spoke later, didn't you? You made some comments on maybe the footy show or something like that? No?
No, you might need to go and check my comments.
Oh, there you go. Wow. Origin footy, it just keeps on delivering. I mean, I've got plenty of thoughts with Smithy. I'd love to hear your thoughts, mate, on this whole drama, air quotes.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Like, I've been sitting at home the last couple of days just having a little giggle to myself, really, about all of this stuff. And, like, I don't know, maybe Michael Maguire has thought to himself, you know what? I was a little bit quiet. I was a little bit subdued in game one and just kept everything hush-hush. He didn't really give too much to the media, if you remember back to game one. So, like, there wasn't much coming out of either camps. The Blues went up to their little bush retreat up in the Blue Mountains, and I don't think I was told that Madge Maguire, he really didn't give the media too much opportunity to be around the players. He gave them about 10 minutes in the warm-up time to get some vision and whatnot. And outside of that, he really didn't give them too much time. So maybe he's sat back and thought to himself after that first game, and he may have been given some advice as well to say, hey, listen, you need to spice things up a little bit here. So he's thrown one out there. It was a bit of a hand grenade. Brent Reid's tried to go at Billy, and Billy's just pretty much shut it down, and it looked quite funny actually. I seen a clip on YouTube of that little interview, and it was all very awkward on their set after it, which was hilarious. Mate, it's actually, sitting back watching it now, outside of like not being involved directly with the footy side and not playing, it's actually, it's funny. It's funny. And I'll tell you what, right? So I snuck out and had a little hit of golf this morning, right? And I come across the paper in Sydney, and it's got a double spread page of Billy and some of the things that happened when he was a player. And you know what? Like, I'll tell you what's happening, mate. They're just trying to get under his skin. That's all it is. I've seen this plenty of times throughout my footy career, whether it be directed at a coach or at a player. All they're trying to do down south, right, is unsettle Billy. That's all they're trying to do. They're trying to get under his skin. They're trying to take his focus away from his role as coach and preparing this Queensland side as best he can during the week. And so that gives them a fighting chance in this series. And the reason for that, mate, is because they're under the pump.
Yeah.
They lost their first game at home in front of their home fans. Their home fans walked out of the stadium at halftime. So they're under the pump big time. And there's only ever been, history shows, right, that it's going to be a very difficult thing for them to do to win this series this year. Only one New South Wales side in history has been able to go on and win a series after losing game one in Sydney and then having to win in Melbourne in a neutral venue and then beat Queensland at home in a decider. I just think it's hilarious. I just think that they're just really all they're trying to do is they got no answers on the footy field, and they're looking now just to try and unnerve the Queensland coach, so it distracts him from his job this week. But I can tell you, it won't happen.
Oh, it's I tell you what, so the only comments Billy has made, literally the only. So straight after the game, he said he's going to keep his comments to himself. He was asked pretty much all throughout the week, and he just said, "No, keeping the comments to himself." The only thing he has said was it's not a good look for families at home watching when something like that happens and it makes him sick.
Yeah,
that is a statement.
That was on the Sunday football show.
Sunday football show when he was getting asked a question. So he didn't bring it up. He was getting asked a question. That is a statement of fact. That is, and so to suggest because whether you agree or disagree with Billy Slater and in regards to you're pulling up clips from like 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Yeah. So what is the standard now? If you're an ex-player that has ever done anything in the game, that you're no longer allowed to say a statement of fact and say that wasn't a good look for the game. Is that the standard now? So all of the pundits that are talking about rugby league, you go, okay, well, one time I actually head hired a guy, so I'm no longer allowed to say this comment of head hides in today's game, which are very different to head hides 20 years ago. I'm not allowed to say anything, literally, not even statements of fact of this was a bad look. This didn't look good for families watching at home. I think you're absolutely crazy if you think that families at home, that was a good look. The biggest superstar in our game getting head high. That is not suggesting at all that Suaalii did it intentionally. I don't think anyone has said Suaalii did it intentionally. I think you're crazy if you think that Suaalii did it intentionally.
Yep. And we've spoken about that, mate. Like why would you particularly on your debut game, right? So here's your first shot to represent New South Wales. You're playing the biggest game of your life. Why would you go out there and to take someone's head off in the opening 7 minutes?
Insane.
Knowing that you're a big chance of getting sent off the field if you do so. So I think everyone knows that he like Joseph just got it wrong.
Yeah. Right?
He had intent to go out there and make a tackle on Reece Walsh and put him under pressure, which he did, right? But he just got it wrong. He just got it wrong. And we've seen in the past, like players that get it wrong, there's consequences for it. Unfortunately, he got sent off. I just sit back and have a little giggle, really, at all this stuff unfolding. It's hilarious. It really is just watching it all unfold and how they're all getting fired up and blowing up and, this is outrageous. He shouldn't be allowed to. I think it's great. Good for the build-up. Love the build-up.
Oh, I'll tell you what, it is spiced things up beautifully. That's why I said, this is origin footy. This has made it super interesting. It's made it almost personal to a degree. It is truly, like, when you look at it from a spectacle perspective, it is absolutely outstanding. And I tell you what, if those comments weren't made, where would the drama be? We wouldn't be talking about all this. We'd just be rolling. So
well, mate, that's what I was saying before. Like I think like the first game, we hardly heard boo from either camp.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It was a very
quiet lead up. Yeah,
very quiet build up. Up north, like the Harry Grant sort of illness early. That was it. And then New South Wales, obviously for a few days before the game, Edwards being ruled out, Teddy comes in. But outside of that, like that was a really quiet build up too. So mate, I love it. I love it. I just like trying to come out and just attack Billy and try to get him off his game. I'll just say like I have a little giggle to myself because it's not going to work. Like he's a professional. Everyone's seen the way he operates. He'll be focused on his job and what he needs to do, and he'll get it done.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And what I love about Origin is that this series is such a good example of everyone goes in with the best intentions. So if you're New South Welshman or Queensland of like, I love footy and let's just sort it out on the field and whatever happens on the field, things happened and we all get caught up in it. But then once the game finishes, we all move on. But because we're all so passionate, we can't help ourselves.
Yeah.
We cannot help ourselves. And that's what makes Origin. It's funny. I have my producer, Matty the Waterboy, we did the first review show podcast and some of the comments were like super passionate. Yeah. And he made a really good comment. He said, listen, if you're ever worried that Origin will die,
no.
Never.
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 Never, ever. Never, ever.
It is so, it's great. I love it.
I'll tell you what, Michael's just texted in, and like he could be on the money here. He goes, "Geez, boys, Madge has done a Wayne Bennett, right? Everyone's talking about Billy and Madge and this and that, and the comments made, and everyone's forgotten about New South Wales and sort of them being 1-0 down. He's taken all the pressure off his footy side, and everyone's walked into the trap. Fair comment. Fair comment.
Absolutely, and you, from the Queensland perspective. Just more ammo. We looked at a few years ago when that huge thing dropped in regards to worst side in, forever.
Yes.
And from a Queensland, it's like, all right, like the battle lines have been drawn. The battle lines have been drawn. So Madge gets what he wants, which is potentially, if this was the intention, spotlight off the Latrell situation, spotlight off, there's players in his team that have had words, via social media, which they've quelled. They've come out. Spencer Lenu and Latrell have come out, so they've quelled. They've got a new half, Mitchell Moses coming in. Nico Hines was dropped.
Hines. Yep.
Teddy was essentially dropped. I know that it was there before, so it's great. It is so good, and this is why Origin is the best sporting spectacle in Australia, and I believe the world. Seriously, I know I'm biased because I love rugby league, but I tell you what, I went to El Clasico in when I went over to Europe. And it was incredible. Like, please, I'm not downplaying. It's the biggest rivalry in the world, Barcelona versus Real Madrid. But I tell you what, I've been to the El Clasico and I've been to Suncorp Stadium in an Origin match in the decider, and it is comparable. Maybe and my bias says I'd enjoy you can cut the tension in a Suncorp Stadium with an absolute knife due to the aggressive part of rugby league. That's just incredible. Welcome back to the captain's run. Alrighty, Latrell Mitchell returns to the side after 2 terrific performances with South Sydney Rabbitohs, partnering Stephen Crichton in the centres. First of all, thoughts on Latrell Mitchell getting called back into the side?
Yeah, mate, I like it. I think, as I spoke about before, like they're 1-0 down and they need something, right? So he's a guy that can really turn up and just, if he's on his game, if he goes out there and plays 8 out of 10, then look, he's gonna pose a huge threat to Queensland. There's no doubt about that. The question is, though, is he going to give New South Wales 8 out of 10? Well, he's been pretty solid the last couple of weeks, but like it's. When you're getting guys into Origin, you're looking for guys with a bit of consistency. So he's had some quiet matches earlier in the year, but I think he's the type of player that adds a bit of fear into the opposition. There's no doubt about that. Like, you can't question that. He's done it in the past, and although the first sort of half of this season he's been quiet by his own standards, as I said, he could just explode next Wednesday night in Melbourne. And if he does that, well, look, Queensland are going to have their hands full out on those edges. So I think it's a selection they had to make. And I heard Gus Gould talk about it in the lead up to, and when he said, is it a risk? It is potentially, yeah, but it's a risk that I think New South Wales have to take by selecting him. And I think when he said risk, that was around the consistency of his performances and sort of not knowing what game is going to transpire out of the 80 minutes that Latrell puts in. But I think for him, not playing fullback and playing in the centres in this footy side, there's less pressure on him. He doesn't have to do as much work as what he'd regularly do at fullback that he does for club level at the Rabbits. So he can just position himself on that left-hand side of the field and wait for the opportune time to get the ball. And that's what they'll try and do. They'll try and give him some opportunities where he's one-on-one with his opposite man, a bit of room, a bit of time to use the football, and particularly close to the line, right? That's where he comes alive. Close to the line. He loves getting the football in his hands, and he loves taking on his opposite centre.
Yeah, I felt like it got to the point a few weeks ago when there was kind of less pressure on having to get the win. More people were leaning towards, we're trying to build something here, and because he's got so much going on in at South, and there was always reports around whether he was interested. He needed to focus on South, and he was going to miss Origin this year. But as the pressure is ramped up for a win, you turn to blokes that win footy matches, and if there is one attribute that Latrell has, pretty much like as good or better than nearly any player, it's just winning big moments. Like he wins big moments. You go back to 2018 grand final, 19, that flick pass that he threw to win the match against the Raiders. You go back to his 2021 form where I thought he was the player of the series. You know, he really has only had probably one bad game in Origin, and that was, I think, 2019 maybe. Outside of that, most of his Origin games, he's been in the probably top 3 or 4 players on the footy field.
Yeah.
And
mate, that's when he seems to come to life, doesn't he? In the big matches, in the big moments. So, you know, that's the reason why they've picked him, is because, you know, they need that.
Yeah.
They need that right now. If they if they don't have players like that can give confidence to all the other players around them and instill a bit of fear in the opposition, right? That, like, what are they going to? What, are they going to go down there and try and grind out an 80-minute win? They can't do that, and I don't think they want to play that. I don't think they can beat Queensland like that. What they want to do is they want to go and blow them off the park.
Yeah, with
guys like Latrell. So as I mentioned, like if he has an 8 out of 10 match, he'll be very hard to handle. Very hard to handle. So, like, they're going to have to do a great job on him. But it's not about focusing on Latrell defensively, right? So they need to do a good job in the middle. If they allow their forwards, particularly when Spencer Leniu gets on the field like he did in Game 1, if they allow too much momentum to the Blues and they're getting quick play of the balls and they're getting good field position, that's when you're inviting Latrell into the game. So where all their hard work needs to happen is in the middle of the field by slowing down the Blues forwards. And then what that does is that takes away time from the halves and essentially takes away time from Latrell as well. It gives your defensive line an opportunity to get up and get in the face of him and take away his time.
Yeah.
Take away his time.
All right, now other big selection decisions. Connor Watson comes onto the bench. Thoughts on Connor Watson at 14 over, say, a Burton?
Well, I don't mind it because, you know, I guess the utility value. The only thing is that I don't think Connor Watson can play sort of outside backs, right?
Yeah.
At a pinch, you could throw him out there, but that's like what happened. Was it last year where Damien Cook went out in the centres?
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, you think of Burton, he's almost like a Selwyn Cobbo in Game 1, where he can play half centre. You know, you could throw one of your centres, your starting centres, out in the wing. Burton comes into the centres if something was to happen to an outside back. But looking at that selection, I'm thinking, well, he'll go on and play middle of the field, right? Like he has done for the Roosters. But he might play some time at 9 as well.
Yeah, I think so.
And they may give Robson a little bit of a spell. Not sure at what stage that will be. Whether that be he plays, say, 55, 60 minutes, and then he unleashes Connor Watson in the last 20. It'll all be determined on the way the game's going, right?
Yeah.
And the state of the game. Maybe he gives him 10 minutes before half-time. A bit like Queensland does with Ben Hunt, Harry Grant combination, where Ben Hunt stays out there for about 25, possibly 30 minutes. Harry Grant comes on the field and plays out the majority of the game. At some stage, he'll want to inject Connor Watson for his energy, and maybe it is when they might need a lift, or maybe if New South Wales get out to, say, a handy lead, to say, righto, put Watson on the field and let's just go again. Let's go another gear. But that's where I see him playing. I don't think he's going to spend much time in the outside backs at all, unless something catastrophic happens. It'll be either playing as a interchange dummy half or going on and playing sort of some time in the middle as an extra forward, sort of link man for the halves.
I looked at Reece Robson's Game 1 and I thought he was great, but I do think that, you know, unless you've played quite a lot of Origin, it's very hard to get through as much defensive work that he did, but also be potent with a running game and attack. And I think what Connor Watson can bring is it can actually, relieve Reece Robson a little bit and say, okay, well, let's say I do come on for 10 minutes at the 30-minute mark or something like that. Reece Robson go, you know what? I can just go absolutely hard for 30 minutes and not have to worry about gassing out. And you actually may get an increased ruck speed from both hookers because he doesn't have to conserve his energy for that 80-minute kind of period. Because although Reece Robson has really good service, I wouldn't necessarily call him a crafty number 9. And the two things that I think he offers is he has a good running game because he's a bit of a bigger body, and he's quite nuggety, but also he can great tackle and good service. But you're not going to get the running game if he has to conserve energy for 80 minutes, and that's where I think Connor Watson may come in really handy for the Blues. Take advantage of that, those big outside backs through the middle, winning that battle. So, yeah, I agree, mate. I think he's probably going to come on 9 or in the middle. All righty, Mitchy Moses is in for Nicho Hines. Thoughts on that selection, Smithy?
Yeah, not surprised. Although given Suoli'i was out of the game after 7 minutes, I was thinking maybe like a small chance, right? An outside chance that they may have stuck with Nicho Hines, given he played half for New South Wales with only 12 men, right? So for the majority of the match. But, there was a lot of comments around his kicking game or the performance with his kicking and Mitch Moses having a stronger kicking game. Mitch has been there before a couple of times. He's won Origin, so he knows what it's all about. So, not overly surprised. Not overly surprised. As I said, I thought it was going to be an outside chance for Nicho to retain that spot, but he's in. There's a lot of talk leading up to game 1, actually, around Moses potentially being in there if he was able to come back. I reckon if he played 2 lead-up games, Kempy, before game 1, I reckon they would have picked him.
Yep.
But he's only able to get up for one match before that first game after coming back from that foot injury, so they left him out. But he goes in. I think what that does is he loves running the footy. He's got great speed. He's got his kicking game. He's got a longer kick than Nicho Hines. I think that's the one thing where he failed to do with his kicking in game 1. Nicho Hines was really force Queensland deep into their own half. So make the back three return the ball, from close to their try line. A lot of his kicks were sort of landing around the 20 metre, 25 metre sort of area of Queensland's line. So they were catching the ball and returning it. They'll play one already on sort of 30, 35 metres out from their own try line. So, or straight away they were in attack mode. So I think that's really the main reason they've gone for Mitch Moses. And, with his inclusion, Dylan Edwards, of course, getting the fullback spot and a couple of other changes. I actually look at that lineup, and on paper, they're a much stronger footy side. Much stronger footy side. They look like a more dangerous football side, actually. Like game 1, I think it was clear looking at their game 1 lineup was, hey, listen, we've picked some big bodies to carry the ball out of our own end, and in the ruck in particular, and a couple of our bench players, we've picked workers, guys that aren't going to shirk the tackling, the defensive part of the game where we need to try and outwork Queensland. They'll just keep turning up all day and making tackles. The concern for me in that game 1 lineup was always, where your point's going to come from. Whereas I look at this lineup now, and I look at guys like Mitchell, and I look at Moses, and I look at Dylan Edwards coming into the side and the way he plays, and also Connor Watson coming off the bench as that sort of impact utility. I think, this is a side that offers a lot more, particularly with the football.
Yeah, I think Mitchell Moses' kicking game is going to be really crucial. I think that, unfortunately for Nicho Hines, his first kick went dead, and ever since that first kick, he was really worried about doing that again, and that's why I felt like a lot of his kicks were falling short. Yeah. Because at Clubland, his kicking game is much better than what it was in game 1. So I wonder whether that 7 tackle set just rattled him a bit, where he's like, they ended up scoring off that. I don't want to do it again. Yep. And I think Mitchell Moses, I do think he has a much longer boot than Nicho at this stage. So I agree with you, mate. I think it's going to play a big factor. It's going to be interesting to see, Mitch Moses, and Nicho Hines does as well, but Mitch Moses, he swings, he goes wherever he wants on the field. And he is a very dominant kind of 7. And it's going to be interesting to see. Game 1, we saw Nicho just stay on that right side. Like, he did not move from the right side. And I wonder whether that was him just because it was his debut starting at number 7, or whether it was direction from Madge to stay on the right side. And I wonder, with Mitchell Moses, he is quite, He's an extremely passionate kind of player, and I wonder if he is directed to stay on that right side and things aren't going their way, does he go, stuff it? Just give me the ball and let me take care of things? Because I do feel there were periods in the game one where you probably needed someone, if the direction was to stay on either side, someone to almost go against those wishes at a point and go, you know what, just give me the ball. I'm going to take my team to the next level.
Yeah, well, I think we've seen that, mate. I think we've seen that in Mitch Moses' game where, look, there'll be a game plan, there'll be a structure that they work towards this week, with their preparation. There's no doubt about that. But I think, watching him play over the last, several seasons, he's a guy that goes after the game. I think he's the guy that that really loves to be involved in, the big plays, and he wants to get his hands on the football. He kicks goals also. I think he'll really want to take charge of this footy side. Now, whether that, I guess another question mark coming up out of this lineup that they've picked now for game 2 is, are they going to be compatible, Luai and Moses? Will their game complement each other? Or is it very much the same type of football that they play, right? They love running the ball. They love using their footwork. They love coming back inside, back into the middle of the field and testing out the big forwards. That's Jerome Luai's been in great form. I called his game on the weekend against Newcastle. He was one of the best players on the field, but he tends to take on the line a lot. Yeah. And he's going to have Latrell Mitchell outside him, so he won't want to go away from him too much because Big Trell will get a little bit cranky, I reckon. But we'll just have to see how it pans out. But mate, there's no doubt that they've got 2 really good strike centres in Crichton and Latrell. So they'll want to get the ball to them, but at the same time there needs to be a balance. Like if you don't have halves that want to run the football and take the line on, well, it reduces the threat in your attack. So I think Madge will be he'll be asking those 2 boys to, hey, don't just be distributors. Take the line on, take them on, and have a crack.
Well, I mean, the most impressive thing about Jerome Luai this year for me is seeing how versatile he is. I think that, for a few years, for me personally, my opinion with Luai, I got stuck in the thought of, oh man, he really just plays a very similar game every game. It's, step off his left foot, come back inside, and don't really, I don't know whether he could actually lead a team around. And what has been so impressive this year for me, with Cleary out for as long as he has been out, it's his ability to see his versatility and go, he actually can lead a team around. He actually has more facets to his game than just being a running 5'8". I think as well, you go back to 2021, a lot of people forget that was Jerome Luai's debut series. Guess who outside him had his best series? It was Latrell Mitchell, because Jerome Luai did a really good job of just getting early ball to Latrell. So that's what's been so impressive about Jerome Luai for me this year. It's almost a confirmation of he's a much more well-rounded rugby league player than I gave him credit for. And this is coming from a guy who's been a massive fan of Luai. But I actually think he'll be quite good at kind of whatever role the team needs with Latrell there at delivering. Matty Burton, unlucky to miss out. Also, Cam McInnes drops out of the side. What do you reckon, Smithy? Matty Burton, he's been 18th man for however many years, and then looking like he could get a shot and doesn't get the crack.
No, doesn't get the crack. And I had my theory around game 1 that he was going to be the late inclusion, right? I think, did I say Hudson Young would come out and Burton would go in? But that didn't eventuate. A little bit surprising, but it's just he's gone with the makeup of the footy side now. Connor Watson going in. There was talk around him being included in that first game until he got that throat injury. I think, was it throat, neck, something to do with his throat? Yeah, something like that. And he missed 1 or 2 matches with the Roosters. So, look, I think he's just gone for the guys that he was planning to have in that footy side in game 1 until they were injured, right? So Dylan Edwards injured. I reckon he did have Mitchell Moses penciled in early in the year, and then he suffered that foot injury and just couldn't get up for game 1. And also another man, obviously, Cam Murray. He battled, I think it was a groin issue for the last sort of 6 weeks. So those guys all come in. But yeah, I guess, he could probably feel a little bit unlucky not to be in this footy side, given he was 18th man last game. But it's just, I think Madge has looked at it and gone, look, horses for courses, the makeup of this footy side and the way I want to play, particularly going down to Melbourne where it's going to be pretty slippery, pretty greasy surface, the MCG. I think maybe having a little man with really high leg speed might be better than carrying a bigger sort of outside back on the bench.
Yeah, so that's what I was going to ask you. What I find quite surprising is, look, maybe Melbourne's pitch is substantially dewier and slipperier than Sydney, but like the idea. So Connor Watson, I think he is selected as a utility. Like I'd assume that's what Michael Maguire sees him at. He doesn't see him as a specialist, like wide running forward or 13.
Yep.
And so what I guess I find surprising is that he didn't have a utility on the bench last game.
Yeah.
And then not only does he not bring Burto in, he also drops Young to bring Connor Watson in, who is a utility and not an edge back rower. So I guess not understanding, and I'd love to hear Michael Maguire's thoughts on it, because he'd absolutely have a thought process behind it, but it's not really a like-for-like selection at all. It's actually substantially different to Hudson Young. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Yeah,
mate, I think the more I look at it, the more I feel as though it's just trying to replicate. I'm not saying that they're just trying to be like Queensland, but they've looked at the Queensland model of the Hunt, Harry Grant combination, and they've thought, well, that works really well. So I think that's what they're aiming for, because when you look at the bloke that's wearing the number 15 jersey, right, Isaiah Yeo, he's the man that's going to go on and play 13. When he comes onto the field to play, he'll play 13. And whether that's a straight swap for Cam Murray comes off the field, having not had a lot of football under his belt over the last 6 weeks, or Murray goes to the back row, which, I don't really think will happen, because Liam Martin and Angus Crichton, they punch out big minutes, right? They can play pretty much the whole game. But, we were talking before about Connor Watson possibly playing that sort of middle forward link guy. I just don't see that happening, particularly with Isaiah Yeo. Now, you look at sort of the makeup of the bench. It's Connor Watson, who either be utility, slash, interchange 9 for Reece Robson. Then you got Isaiah Yeo, 13. Ola Kawatu, you would think would play back row, but can play in the middle. Then Spencer Leniu, you're dead set middle forward, and then that's it. So I reckon he might be a straight swap for Robson. And so I guess the more I look at it,
and that's I guess what surprises me. So why wasn't that mindset for game one of having a hooker on the bench, or even because Reece Robson, I reckon he could play 13 at a pinch, so he could cover or even front row if he had to.
Yeah, so what you're saying is why, like, if Watson was injured, why didn't they have, say, Appy or a Damien Cook?
Yes, exactly. And maybe the game plan has changed. I just think it's an interesting change of playing intention from Michael Maguire, because it is, like, it sounds like such a small detail. It's not. It changes your whole game plan by having a hooker on the bench rather than just 4 big forwards. Fair. Let's get some. We've got some audio here of Billy Slater on the omission of Selwyn Cobbo.
Selwyn's just not quite 100% at the moment. He's been playing, with injections and that sort of stuff, and collective with a few things that he would like to work on in his game. We just thought it was best for Selwyn to have a rest, and the Broncos have got the bye this week, and I'm pretty sure if the Broncos were playing, that Selwyn wouldn't be playing for the Broncos. So I just felt that this was the best thing for him personally and the best thing for the team.
There we have it, Billy, the man. He said Selwyn Cobbo, a mixture of everything, really, as to why he wasn't selected. Kurt Catewell comes in. I'd love to hear your thoughts, Smithy, on the selection decision by Billy Slater.
Well, look, I think if he's 100% fit, I think it's pretty straightforward. He's in the side. Like, he come off the bench in game one after 7 minutes, and he played a vital role for Queensland. He played extremely well. And on the weekend, look, he didn't have the happiest of games. Like, he made a few errors, but he tried extremely hard. He tried his backside off. Ended up with over 200 running meters, some tackle breaks, and come up with plenty of really, really big efforts for the Broncos. So, I'm assuming that it all comes down to his ability to prepare for this game. That's all it is. Billy mentioned, in his press conference there that he'd be pretty certain that if the Broncos were playing this week, that Selwyn wouldn't be able to play the game. So to me, that says that he's a little bit banged up at the moment. That's all.
Yeah.
I reckon so because I know from being involved in the last couple of series that leading into these games, Billy will get a medical report on all the players and he'll understand where they are at physically. If they are getting pain-killing injections before games, what's their training week look like at their current clubs at the moment? Some players aren't able to train a full week of training because they're carrying little niggles and this and that. And so I believe that he's spoken with, his medical staff of the Maroons and has been told that, look, we've spoken with the Broncos officials. Selwyn, if he is to be picked in this side for game 2, he wouldn't be able to, train or prepare, say, until late in the week. And I think Billy would have said, well, look, I can't have someone in our camp that's not training until, say, Saturday or Sunday. This is a huge game for us. There's an opportunity for us to wrap up the series here in Melbourne. I need 18, or the 20 guys that he picked, fit and ready to go day one, and they need to be on the field every session that we have. That's what I believe is happened.
Yeah, I think that. Look, I understand when, footy fans go, well, come on, he was awesome game 1, and he's a game breaker, and I get that, but I also can't stress enough, because it's such a short period that you've got those boys together, the amount of reps you need to get through, with every player in the exact position they're going to be playing, it's really important to get as close to things becoming second nature as possible. Defensive systems, put it this way, you don't want players out in the field having to constantly think, okay, what's the system? Okay, my inside man, is he quick? Will he be able to take on, if Dylan Edwards is sweeping out the back, is he fast enough to, get to him? The more reps you do in camp, the more trust you build, the more second nature the system becomes. And so that's why it's really important that the players are training as many days as possible together. So I'm just trying to explain to people that might go, oh, come on, why wouldn't you allow him not to train until maybe Saturday or Sunday? It's well, you're losing almost the bulk of your training sessions if you've got an injury and you can't really get through it. So I understand it. I will say I am quite surprised, though, Kurt Capewell coming in. I would have assumed Dane Gagai would have been put on the bench as an outside back similar to Selwyn. Now, Billy Slater has come out and said he's got faith in Kurt Capewell as almost a utility-ish outside back, where if he moves him to centre, then he'll be able to move Val or Hammer to the wing or whoever, if someone gets injured on the wing, that is. What are your thoughts on Kurt Capewell getting selected?
No, you know what, mate? I feel the same way. I think because Capewell, he's a back rower, right? So and we have seen him fill in at times in the centres, be it at club level or at state of origin. But I guess at that level, particularly with Billy's selection of Selwyn Cobbo in game 1, he's a genuine outside back, And there was a lot of talk around his selection in game 1, and Billy came out and said, "Well, look, if you look at the stats over the last two years, history says that." We've lost 4 outside backs in the 6 games that we've played, so that's why I've gone with Cobbo. This selection now is sort of like a guy that can cover nearly all positions in the forward pack, other than dummy half, and can play in the centres as well. So he hasn't picked an out and out back on the bench. So yeah, mate, I will say I'm a little bit surprised that Dane Gagai, he is 18th man. I'm a little bit surprised that he wasn't included in the 17 because he is an out-and-out centre/winger. He can play both positions. He can play both. And if there was something to happen to Reece Walsh again in game 2, well, it's pretty straightforward. Hammer goes to fullback, and Gagai would slot straight in the centres, where he plays every week for the Newcastle Knights. So I guess I was a little bit surprised at that. But, mate, it's hard to question Billy and his selections. He's very rarely got it wrong in his 7 games that he's coached Queensland now. And the one thing that he does do more than anyone else, and I said this after the selection of Cobbo in game 1, it's hard for people to criticise Billy's selections when no one puts in the time and the preparation and the hours spent watching vision of every Queenslander that's available to play for Queensland. So this is a calculated move. Do I expect Cobbo to drop out of the 18 and Gagai to come in? Don't think so. Because I think if Billy thought that was the best way to go, then Gagai would have been in the 17 to start with. He's obviously seen something in Kurt Capewell's game over the last little bit. I know he's been a little bit injured. Had a great start to the year. Fantastic start to the year with the Warriors. He's only been back for maybe 2 or 3 after his injury. But he's obviously seen something in his game over the last couple of weeks that he feels like he's up to the role that he wants him to play next Wednesday.
Yeah, so because it's similar to the Madge situation with the utility and the hooker. Is that was this a part of the initial plan, or did Billy see something in game 1 where he said, you know what, if I can get a utility that is more of a forward that can play centre rather than a full outside back that can maybe play in the forwards, maybe that suits the setup. Because I do think that it's a mixture of Selwyn being injured, but also I do think there were things that he did in game 1 that Billy probably saw. Like, for example, I do feel in the first half his defence, he really struggled when he got out there to just with his defensive reads in the system. I think he was just took a bit of time. And Selwyn Cobbo even said straight after the game, he said, in the first half it was really hard for me to get up with the tempo. In the second half I really eased into it. Yeah, so I wonder whether it's, because he's also taking painkilling injections and he can't train the whole week, Billy's looked at that and said, well, when you did get on the field in game 1, although you did play really well, there were areas of your game that we probably need you in camp training the whole time to fix those areas. And if I don't have you the whole time, I can't fix the areas that I want to fix, because he said there are a few things that Selwyn wants to work on his game as well in that quote.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I wonder if that's the reason. But as I said, I'm with you. I'm a bit surprised that Dan Gagai isn't that number 17, just like I'm a bit surprised that, Madge didn't go for a utility on the bench in game 1. So going to be interesting to see. I look, if I'm a betting man, I don't think Dan Gagai comes in, but there is a small part of me goes, does Dan Gagai slip onto the bench, or is...
So you're like me with Burton in game 1.
Maybe, or is someone carrying an injury that's touch or go, that doesn't need time in camp because they've been in camp for a few years now, that is being covered maybe. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Possibly. Possibly. But, it's a difficult one, right? Because, he hasn't really given us too much. He said a couple of things. Selwyn needs to work on a couple of things in his game.
Yep.
Plus he's carrying an injury and more than likely wouldn't play this week if Broncos were playing. So we haven't got a definitive answer or reason for it. And also too, we're not in camp with their squad. Yeah. So we don't know exactly what's going on with all the other players. But what I do know is that Billy, he likes to have all of his players fit and ready to go. He doesn't want to carry players through the majority of the week without training. So if that's the case, then I think that's a huge part of it. But very interesting to see the selection on the bench again. But he's got great utility value. It's a bit like New South Wales, different utility, of course, but they've got a guy there that can cover multiple positions.
Alrighty, the extended squad. Helam Lukey, who I feel deserves it. I think he's been playing really good since he come back from injury. He's a young gun. I think you're going to see him in Queensland jersey over the next few years. I am a bit surprised at Trent Leoro. Now, don't get me wrong. He's a butler. He works his ass off. But it was a bit out of left field that he was brought into the squad. Although, as I said, when you're talking about, the effort areas and what Billy seems to absolutely love, like players that just go and go and go, he is one of those players.
Well, he is, mate. And I think these two young fellas coming into this camp, it's more around, giving a couple of young fellas an opportunity to come in and get a taste of it all. So it's more about planning it for the future. I don't think they're going to get a look in for the game, in game 2 if, a couple of people go down. But I think it's more about planning for the future and say, look, guys, hey, you guys are close.
Yep.
The things that you've been doing out on the footy field for your respective clubs, they're the things that I'm looking for in Queensland Origin players. So they've been rewarded.
Yep.
It's a small reward for what they've been doing and how they've been applying themselves at the Storm and the Cowboys over the last sort of season and a half. And there are a couple of quality young players too, like Helam Lukey. He's had his issues with some injuries, some serious injuries actually, over the past few seasons. But he's a quality back rower. Trent Liero started his career in the back row. Now he's playing a lot of time in the ruck as a 13, and he's the type of player that really I think suits playing State of Origin. He's a bigger body to say a Reuben Cotter, but plays that similar style, right? So he'll hit the ball up. He gives you plenty of minutes, makes plenty of tackles. So I think for those two guys, it's more of a reward from Billy to say, hey boys, love the work that you're doing at the moment. Keep it up. Come into camp with us. Have a look at how we do things, because if you keep tracking the way you are, you're a chance of being here in the near future.
Isn't it interesting how differently New South Wales have used their 18th, 19th and 20th man? Mitchell Barnett, who is essentially there or thereabouts to play, and he's not necessarily a young player. I know he's new to Origin, but he's not young. And he's there. If someone goes down, he will go in and play. And then you've got Cam McInnes, who played last game and not necessarily a young player, and Luke Keary. I do find it interesting those two 19 and 20 positions are used quite differently with each coach. Billy's using it as a young, a reward for young players that potentially could wear the jersey in the future. Whereas Michael Maguire, I guess, is using it, it seems, for guys he wants around culturally and standard-wise to a degree. Maybe, especially,
Yeah. I think it just reflects the position that both sides are in at the moment, right? So Queensland are up 1-0 in this series. They're in a very strong position to go on and win the series. Not saying that they're going to, but they're in a strong position. And it reflects where they have been over the last couple of years. Like, they've won the last two. So at the moment, I think Billy feels as though, look, we're a settled sort of 17 or 18 players. Everyone being fit. Queensland, both sides are missing guys through injury. But I think he's just thought, look, I think this is a really good opportunity to get a couple of players in, a couple of younger players. I think they're both only 23 this year.
Yeah, young.
Both Liero and Helam Lukey, and just get them in and just give them a little taste of what Origin's about. Because not only as coach, your main focus is the next game, right? And putting a strong squad together and making sure that they prepare well and give them a good opportunity to go out there and win a game of football. But also, you got sort of one eye looking at the future as well, and you're always planning. You're always planning that next move to always stay ahead of the game and have your team and have your state well prepared to continue your success. So, I think that's why he's gone that way. Very different to New South Wales, of course. They've lost the last two. They lost game one, and they need experience right now. They need experience. They need guys that have been around the game for a long time. They've played in some big matches, and they know what it's all about. So I think that's why Maguire's gone with guys like McInnes and Keary as their 19th and 20th man.
Now, Felice Kaufusi gets called back in. He was 18th man last game, and he obviously got brought on. But interesting, like the Queensland bench it's not crazy different to last game, but it is. It's substantially different when it comes to Felice Kaufusi. He's not really a similar player to Hopgood. I'd say Kaufusi, he's found himself moving into the middle more as he gets a little bit older, but I'd say he's a more defensively orientated player, whereas Hopgood is although good defensively, he's more of a just get through a mountain of work, got an offload in him. And then obviously we've got Kurt Catewell. How do you think Kaufusi is used? Do you think he's used basically exactly the way Hopgood was, or what do you reckon?
Yeah, I think similar, because if you look at his club football at the moment, mate, he's moved from the back row and he's playing up front. Mate. So he started in the front row last week for the Dolphins in that great win against the Sharkies.
Doesn't that show you how much the game's changed with
Yeah.
the front rowers these days? It's crazy.
Yeah, well, he and Kenny Bromwich
Yeah.
started in the front row.
Two of the best back rows of the last 10 years.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Mate, it's funny. Like, I've seen it happen on a few occasions where back rowers, and I say this with all due respect to these two boys because I've played a long, long time with them, but they're getting towards the end of their career where the coach comes up and says, boys, I think the back row days are over. And just get your heads right in the middle, up in the front row now, fellas.
Yeah.
So I think that's where it is. So I think, again, he's a guy that, it's like he's playing some pretty good football, Felice Kaufusi.
Been great.
And I thought he was really strong coming up against like an aggressive pack in the Sharks. And he really did a good job to start, to get the Dolphins off on a good start the other week last Thursday. So he could be used in either back row or in the middle. I guess the good thing about this footy side and the luxury that Billy has as coach, when you look at guys like Carrigan, Reuben Cotter, even Lindsay Collins, like they can punch out some long minutes.
Yeah.
They can punch out some really long minutes, especially Carrigan. Cotter and Carrigan. I've seen Reuben Cotter's played 80 minutes in Origin before.
Yeah.
A couple of times. Carrigan could easily punch out 65 straight, easily.
Jeezy's first stint last game one was outstanding.
Yeah,
Holy.
easily. You know what I mean? So that's the luxury that Billy does have. I'm not sure whether in an ideal world that he'll want to do that. I'm thinking he'd like to give him a spell before he gets to the 3/4 mark of the game. But I guess the positive around having a guy like Felice Kaufusi is that, look, he's played the majority of his career at back row, so he can go in there, fill in there if needed, if Nanai or Sewer need a break. And of recent games, he's been playing in the ruck, so he's ready to go there as well.
Yeah, because when I look at this bench, and maybe it was just because of the injuries or whatever, but it looks like if game one was an attacking bench, this looks like a defensive bench to me. Kaufusi and Catewell both. Now, I know Catewell, he's, in regards to missed tackles, he can miss tackles, but what Catewell does in defence has probably the best scramble defence of any back rower. He scrambles for the light. Like every game, you never not see Kirk Catewell making those efforts behind the line trying to cover.
Yeah, mate, what he gives up, say, when you think about, say, a Felice Kaufusi or even Mo Fodawaker, right? So he doesn't have as much aggression as them with the first contact, but he does all the little things, the little cleanup areas of the defence really well.
Yeah.
Particularly coming out of that Penrith system that he played in. So, like, getting involved in tackles from marker, getting out and taking time away from the halves, getting out on kick pressure, all these type of little things he does extremely well. I guess the impact guy is Big Moe. Yeah. Fodawaker coming off the bench. Like, he can come out and really sort of increase energy around the middle of the field. He can come up with a couple of strong carries to get the halves back in the game or Walsh into the game, something like that. So, yeah, I agree with you. It's a different looking bench, and they have gone for a side that looks as though, particularly off that forward pack and the bench that we're talking about, that it's going to be. It's not a game where they're going to go, right, we're going to go put another 30 points on.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be a tight contest, and we need guys in there that we believe they're going to play out the 80 minutes. And when we need a couple of those big moments, not necessarily with the football, defending, that they'll be there to make those plays.